Well, as you might notice, if you happen to watch, I'm back again for the time being. Three primary reasons. Uh, some interesting things have happened. I also want to clarify my stance on some things, and I'm procrastinating with other things I should be doing. We won't get into which of those is the primary reason, of course. In the meantime, I am Forrest Poston. This is WVU Football Going Deep. It is still the channel where trash talk and personal insults do not fly unless the insults are particularly well justified and well written or well spoken. Now, hey, I don't know how long I'll keep doing the site, and I'll still get into why why I'm more inclined to do it and less inclined to do it than before. And so, hey, please subscribe. That won't hurt. Make comments. Uh, Click the thumbs up button, the notification bell. Tell your friends. There is a thanks button below the video, and I will also put in a buy me a cup of coffee link and a larger percentage of the money and a lower threshold if you go that route. Now, I had the second press conference of the season. Still, no press allowed at the practices. My understanding is that will continue for the first three practices. Then we see. So we're not getting, anything but Rodriguez's perspective at this point. And of course, no pads, no real hitting. Um, Information is a little short, and the questions are redundant and not real, perceptive. It's certainly not difficult. Even Rodriguez keeps it. Well, I said this before. Um, that first thing I actually want to get into, uh, people do not understand my stance on Rodriguez. First thing you got to keep in mind is I was a Rodriguez fan before he won 10 games a season. I was following the team long before that, but hey, I loved watching the Rodriguez teams. I loved him right up until he bolted, and after that I got to reading more, studying more, and people were talking more, and so I came to understand his limitations. Um, I suppose to be, if I'm going to be self-reflective and honest, my biggest objection is probably because so many people take those last 2.5 seasons as the only meaningful seasons. They think, because things were great for a short time, that makes Rodriguez a great coach. And well, I'm still not convinced of that. He's a good coach. Um, and he has learned some specific things. That's something I'm going to get into here pretty soon. Um, well, let's do it now. Because one of my biggest objections after his first press conferences and first couple of appearances, he kept claiming that he knew more, he was a better coach, he'd learned things in 17 years, and never mentioned one specific dang thing. It was always just this big claim. Well, and he wasn't showing it, wasn't proving it, wasn't talking about it. So I questioned it. Then he started showing, particularly in these last couple of press conferences, more self-awareness. He understood some of what his personal limitations were when he was at West Virginia before, understood some issues, And that was good. I said, hey, I like this. And then I thought, he's more self-aware about what his limitations were and are, but I'm not hearing anything about changes. He said he left West Virginia and was wrong for leaving, but he did it because he was too impatient. And then he said he's still too impatient. And I said, well, now wait a minute. Didn't say anything about learning patience. Uh, so I saw that as a problem. Well, it is a problem. Well, today's press conference, he said two specific things that indicated, adapting. Well, one of them indicates adapting his own behavior, and the other, adjusting for his own behavior. Because, now his first press conference and this one, he said, he just completely missed Pat White's running ability in practices because he was much better live than when you're not hitting the quarterback. And, because if you're not tackling, you don't get to see what the QB can really do, right? Making people miss. And so, he said, hey, White should have been starting sooner. A lot of people have been saying that. Now, I'm not saying White should have started his first year because I don't know the speed would have made enough difference then. But before the Louisville game, probably should have been starting. But I'll also say bringing Slayton in was also a key factor. It really was, the combination of players, White, Slayton, Schmidt, Renaud, that made the big difference. But okay, that's one thing he's learned. And, made some changes. He is, running practice differently with a little more hitting on the quarterback to see how they run. What's maybe more interesting is he specified that, especially his son Rhett, but also White and some other coaches, are there partly to compensate for his limitations as a coach. His tendency to yell when maybe he shouldn't. Yelling is not always the best way to coach, but it is still his primary method. His son Rhett, very different personality. We know Pat White has a much different personality. So it's not just that they bring different things to the players, they bring things differently. He understands that and understands the importance of it. And of course, some things about yourself you can change and some you can't, or some you can change eventually, but not today. So you find ways to compensate if you're smart, if you learn. So he has learned to pick coaches that fill in the gaps, coaches who can bring something to the players that he cannot. That's a very good thing to learn. One other thing, specific to, how the offense runs. First time around at West Virginia, they did not really run an RPO offense. It was a run option with some possibility of a bubble screen, but nothing downfield. There was no, real pass danger other than the bubble screen. And man, we saw that. Fans were, even before the 10-win seasons, it was another bubble screen. And I will stand by the belief that that limitation in the offense was the primary reason for the Pitt loss. And don't tell me Pat White got hurt. I know Pat White got hurt. And the offense was sucking before he got hurt. And, it should have been at least good enough to win with Jarrett Brown in there. Pat White getting hurt is not a good enough excuse. Now he runs a true RPO. There are 2 run options and a pass option, a downfield pass option. Now, that doesn't eliminate screens or anything like that. He has simply created greater variety in the offense, which makes it harder for a defense to predict. And that offense had become predictable. That's why Pitt won. I do believe that. It's one of the reasons USF won 2 out of 3 games, in those seasons. And did a decent job of limiting the offense in the one they lost. But he's learned, he's adapted. That is probably the number one thing I needed to see out of him. If he had not learned these things, I don't think the team would be successful overall, not to the degree that fans are at least hoping for. Some are expecting and some are assuming. But it does open up significant possibilities. Now, some other things that were, press conferences, also with Zach Alley, not going to talk a lot about that. It's been discussed, but not by me, but by others. It does look like the cut to 105 roster limit is going to happen. Of course, I was expecting that. Rodriguez was still hoping they would, bring it in slowly so that you don't have to dump a bunch of guys all at once. I covered this in an earlier video. The way things stand, it looks like at least 20 players who are 20 guys who are on the roster at the moment will have to go. To make, we're a tad over the 105 limit right now, and we still have guys who have, either transfers, commits from junior college, or high school freshmen coming in, and we have to have room for them when this limit goes in place. You can assume almost every walk-on is gone. Some of the specialists who are currently walk-ons will have to stay. They'll get some type of scholarship, half scholarship, something. You might not be able to carry as many specialists as you would have, as well as not being able to carry as many at different positions. How many of the returning scholarship players or how many of the new transfers who just got here in January will also be gone? As I said, I think we have too many corners. I do not think it's sustainable with 105 limit to keep as many corners as they have, which means some guys who transferred in will have to transfer out. Rodriguez said in the press conference that we don't have enough receivers yet, which came as a surprise to me because I thought we had too many, or at least the maximum. And he feels like we're still going to have to go out and get, because he specified, first he said depth, but then he said we just don't have the numbers. Yeah, right now, over 10% of our roster is wide receivers. Yes, you have 2 to 4 receivers on the field at any given time, but it's still an issue. I hope he knows more than I do, but it still seems strange. Now, of course, he hasn't had to deal with the 105 limit before. So sitting down to figure out room by room, he may have to give up at wide receiver to compensate someplace else. Now, I'm going to drop back and cover something here. I've mentioned it before. Rodriguez talked about it in Monday's or Tuesday's press conference, but somebody said something really stupid on one of the boards, so I'm going to cover it again. 105 players is rough to get through a full college year. It's not really enough. I think they screwed up. But with all of the money issues and, it was some way to kind of compromise. But, they could, the NFL gets by with fewer players. The NFL has a practice squad, and the NFL can sign a player anytime during the season if they have to. You can make trades through much of the season. So it's just different. Now, we reach the point with all of the money and, free trade, I guess you call it. Are we going to get to a point in college where we have the equivalent of practice squads and making trades and all of that kind of screwy stuff? I hope not. I don't think so. I think sooner or later they have to start saying, we have to do something about it sensibly, and we have to recognize that it is still freaking college. It is not just smaller pro football. It's college football. It is still about education and then getting to play football. I know at many schools that's a fallacy. They just pretend. But I still believe in right and wrong. Right is it's an education, football second. Reality, it's not always that way, but what we should be trying for. And I believe in should and shouldn't. Yeah, I'm that kind of guy. Real annoying. Anyway, all right. Also mentioned, it runs a freshman-friendly system, especially offense. And he, basically thinks that, that will matter these days because you're more likely to need a guy who's freshman, redshirt freshman, or, maybe experienced elsewhere, but first year in the program. And they have to be able to learn things more quickly. Now, the flip of that will always be a system that's easier to run is a system that's easier for defenses to figure out. There's a balance. There's always got to be a balance. Well, it's the same thing. A defense that is, too limited. If the offense can figure it out, there is essentially always a weakness in a defense if you can find it. Yeah. And I dropped my notes, and I probably shouldn't have because I know I am forgetting something else that was on the list. But I want to mention, and this is getting to, the things that Rodriguez has said in his last 2 press conferences, most of them, make me want to get back on his support side. he has limitations that, okay, that some of them he's compensating for, some I don't, well, he may not agree that they're limitations. He's never called me up to ask, and he might not care anyway. But what is still bothering me, and it's not so much about Rodriguez as it is college football, but to a certain degree how Rodriguez and Ali are reacting to this new era as it stands. Um, right now, I mean, everybody knows players are going to move a lot more. As a coach, your choices are to kind of say, heck with it, let them move, we'll bring guys in. The other option is, other than money, what can we do to stabilize the program? How do we get players how do we bring in players that we want and get them to stay without just continually upping the money? And of course, that is create a place players want to be. It's an aspect of culture. Partly it is coaching, but it is the entire atmosphere, including, bringing in players who get along with one another. If you don't consider, a player's personality, are they a complete fit? It can cause a problem. Team chemistry. Yeah, I know some of you hate that concept. Um, Brown ran into problems last year. I've got some guesses why. I do not think it was the culture. He was trying to create a place where players wanted to stay. That was working, particularly in the last year. Uh, Rodriguez leans more towards, let them go if they want to go. Now, Zach Alley, what I would consider a good thing that he said in his press conference was this idea of telling the players that you will work harder here than any place else, but you will be treated better here than any place else. I like hearing that. That's a very good concept. Treated better, what that really means, not everybody's going to agree on. But at least the idea is there. I like that. That's a very positive thing. And obviously, that could create an atmosphere where players want to stay. But he also kind of, indicated that, the days of bringing in a young player with the expectation that in his third year he'll be great might be over. You are bringing in guys for now. And to me, that is a bad thing. I recognize that the legal issues currently are pushing things in that direction. I think it's one of the things they have to find a way to limit. But I do not like the idea of not only having a 50 or 60% turnover every year, but just accepting that you're going to have that every year. Now, I like to watch those young players grow. That's part of the fun, not just this season's games, but thinking about yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And once again, you can hear Reggie in the background She is largely happier here in the room, but I have the window partly open to get some air. I also have plastic fencing over the window because the fresh air makes her want to go outside. It really makes her want to go outside. Anyway, I think I covered most of the things that I intended to cover. I hope I made things reasonably clear. With some of the things Rodriguez said, I have significantly higher hopes for this season. Or let's say I think the high hopes are more reasonable. Still have some issues, and I just the idea of starting every season not knowing who anybody is bothers me. And of course, the way things are going, I may not be able to remember who people are. So anyway, not having issues along those lines as yet, but I am of an age where it could become a factor. That we shall see, I suppose. I will probably, it looks like, come on more often with the press conferences. And actually, what I did want to say, first press conference, Rodriguez said there were 9 or 10 players on the sidelines, some type of injury, basically riding bikes and that kind of thing. I don't know who they are because aside from the fact that Rodriguez didn't just mention it as a matter of, procedure, nobody asked. I don't know if they were told not to ask. And no, nothing on it today. I assume Jaheim White is not currently participating because he had minor issue, work done on his knee. But who the others are, don't know. And Rodriguez pointed out, hey, this makes it harder to assess them. Some of these guys could end up off the team into the portal because of these injuries, and we don't even know who they are right now. Dang it, that ain't right. That's partly on Rodriguez, also on the media. All right, now I'm gone. I would go pet Reggie, but I don't think she's interested right now. Meanwhile, Hollygo is just curled up in a box on the cat tree. So she doesn't care about going out. Fresh air's good enough. And I'm going to say that today's video is good enough for me. I'll do some quick editing and upload. Talk to you later.